It is an essential of the happy life that a man would have almost no mail and never dread the postman's knock. In those blessed days I received and answered only 2 letters a week, one from my father, which was a matter of duty, and one from Arthur, which was the highlight of the week. For we poured out to each other on paper all the delight that was intoxicating us both. This is Pints with Jack, Season 7, Episode 1. Welcome to Season 7. Dear Pints with Jack listeners, thank you for downloading this episode of Pints with Jack, the podcast where we discuss the work of C.S. Lewis. This season we're reading some of Lewis's letters which have been brought together in several different collections. We will be reading his correspondence with Mary Willis Shelburne, found in Letters to an American Lady, as well as his letters to children and his exchange of Latin letters with St. Giovanni Calabria. Our opening quotation comes from Surprised by Joy, where Lewis describes an ideal world. In this utopia, the postman would deliver next to no mail. Many are surprised to learn that such a prolific letter writer could find mail sometimes so delightful, but more often incredibly burdensome. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, where we're going to have a bit of a catch-up, and then talk about the coming season and Lewis the letter writer. Lots of love, Andrew, David, and Matt. Gentlemen, welcome. How are you both doing?
I love. Did you catch that was written in the form of a letter? That's great. Next time you can sign it 100,000 blessings, which is how Lewis would often sign off his letters. And I've adopted that as well. I'm doing well. It's a day off and I'm right in front of a big trip on Monday. And so I'm getting good things done.
Wonderful. How about you, Matt?
This is our first recording in a while. How are we both so casual? Each of you guys have we've just been in between seasons. This is recording number 1. I feel like it should be just one big grand, hey guys. I feel like we kind of took that thunder away because we recorded a common room a couple days ago. So it feels like we just recorded, but I mean, this is the beginning of a whole new journey, guys. And if you think about it, every previous journey, there's like different lessons that Lewis teaches us. And so I particularly am doing very well. I'm here in Washington, D.C., visiting the girlfriend, which made me completely forget the morning recording.
Well, this is it. This was it. I was gonna wait for you to finish and say, well, I did have all of that upbeat energy this morning when Andrew and I were waiting for you to turn up.
I get a text, guys, at like 9:15. I see from David, Matt, where you at? And I just felt so bad. I'm in D.C. visiting the girlfriend. Before work, it's been fun because I have a rental car. We grab breakfast and then I drive her to her work. And I just completely forgot. Like there's nothing. I literally looked at a text and I just put a hand on my face. I'm like, oh man, good job, Matt. But they were gracious enough. So we are now recording 5 hours later.
And the advantage is that we can now have alcohol. So why don't we share what we're now drinking?
Well, sadly, because I'm on vacation, I'm still with water. But I guess since I was the one that screwed up earlier, I should not have the delight that you guys get to. For you had to self-sacrifice in due time for me.
Yeah, if I had my way, you'd be on bread and water for the next 3 days.
I recently performed my first wedding, and the lovely couple who met at my morning prayer sessions at Oxbridge last summer, and I did their wedding in Seattle a couple of weekends ago, went out and got me a lovely bottle of Sherry Oak Cask, Macallan 12. And so, can you smell it, Matt?
Oh, I can.
Ooh. And then when I was at Camp Allen, a dear friend brought me a bottle of Lagavulin 16.
Oh my goodness, you've got the best non-peaty and the best peaty.
Okay, so here, listen to this.
Oh, deeper sounding.
So, yes. So I'm going to look up the Macallan 12 while David tells us what he's drinking, and then I'll decide which one, or maybe we should put it to a vote.
Well, I'm drinking something that I had last season, Left Hand Brewing's Milk Stout. So it's rather delicious with a La Croix chaser. Because here on the podcast, we say La Croix because we're posh like that, not LaCroix.
Yeah. Well, and Matt is not drinking. What will you be drinking later? Is there anything in your future this evening, Matt?
Yeah, going to another gala tonight. And so
Okay.
I will be
Another?
having cocktails. Yes, I had one on Wednesday too, which was really lovely.
This is Matt's life, traveling the world and going to galas.
I literally show up and they're like, "Oh, you're at the best table." And I'm like, "That's the girlfriend, not me." I said, I literally
She
joked with
gets
them. I'm
you.
like, "I'm a peasant. I would not have an invite."
That's great. Well, I haven't seen this Macallan before, and I don't even see it listed in my book. So I think that in honor of Matt's and my first meeting, and Matt not being able to drink, I shall, kind of make the great sacrifice and drink Macallan 18 on behalf of Matt.
That sounds so good. I'm actually, you know what? Anytime someone does Macallan 18. Wait, I thought you got 12.
Or 12, I'm sorry, Macallan 12. Yeah.
For a second when you were saying 18, I'm like, you know what? I can't get mad at that. That's just beautiful.
Well, the best part, Matt, is that you get to do the toast that we're going to drink to. Switching it up this season. We've made Andrew work hard enough.
Mark Hofer, we raise a glass to you as we begin this season and this journey. And we would pray as you join us along this journey and dive into the letters of Lewis, that the words of the pages jump off and penetrate your heart and your mind and renew your spirit for the Lord. Cheers.
Cheers.
I feel so left out right now.
Ooh, that's very nice. Very soft on the mouth, too.
Well, we spoke about this a little bit on our recent Common Room episode, but for those who haven't watched it yet, what have you guys been up to since we finished season 6? What did you do on the holes?
I'm reading some really great books. I read, almost finished, Fulfillment of All Desire, He Leadeth Me. I'm going through Be Healed that I have now just about finished by Dr. Bob Schutz. Yeah, I guess I mentioned it in the Common Room, but I have started dating someone over the summertime, and she's the most wonderful human in the world, and I'm still not entirely sure why she...
Perhaps the third most wonderful human in the world. We'll fight you on that, and she can prove herself.
I thought you meant for a second, like your mother and your grandmother. It took me a second to realize where you were getting at.
Yeah.
No, he means myself and Andrew.
Yeah, I guess that's that is the big update, and so that's why I'm in DC, which I might be recording a lot from DC as we're doing distance. Good. I guess that's the reason.
Okay. Well, I've been busy with loads of travel. Seattle and Chicago, and for the Wade Center, and Holland, Michigan, and Grand Rapids, where we met in person. Off to Romania on Monday for the C.S. Lewis conference there. And then while I'm in town, lots of clergy things. So I'm supplying at a few different churches. And Kristen and I are doing a 3-part Narnia series in December for one church, and a one-off Narnia thing for another church. And so it's been busy with loads of good things.
And for myself, I've been also very busy. Lots of technical things behind the scenes for the podcast, planning season 7, and organizing the C.S. Lewis Reading Day, which is shaping up rather nicely for November 29th, which will be, when this is published, tomorrow. So I'd like to remind everyone, get your favorite C.S. Lewis quotations to post on social media. And if you go to pintsforjack.com and you search for the Reading Day, you'll find a page full of all the graphics that we've been sharing on Instagram for the past 7 or so years. So if you want to post a pretty version of one of the quotations, there should be one there that you'll be able to use.
Excellent, and happy birthday to Jack in advance.
And apparently Madeleine L'Engle.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, I've recently learned that.
Yeah.
But yeah, nope. So that's pretty much kept me busy, as well as 2 small children. The toddler is also getting potty trained, so that's terrifying. You're a brave man if you walk around barefoot. That's all I'll say.
Oh, wow.
Well, can we talk our listeners through the structure of the coming season? We did it in the retrospective at the end of last season, but it's been a while and there's been a little bit of an evolution. So I'll begin by saying that it has changed a little bit, but it does begin the same. So we have today's episode, which is really just a hi, we're back sort of episode, and have a bit of a catch up. And then tomorrow we've got the C.S. Lewis Reading Day, and there's going to be a live stream as well. Plenty of books to give away. Please sign up for them if you want any of them. And what are we going to be doing, Matt?
Well, December, we are going to be discussing and going through Letters to an American Lady.
Have you read it yet?
Nope.
Didn't think so. Okay.
Actually, the time of this has been released. When they're listening to this, the answer will be yes. Has to be.
We're barely out of October, Matt. Or David, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
I'm
Here's what
expecting
you
to get
do,
a text
Matt.
message the morning of asking exactly how far we're reading on the first episode, so he knows when to stop.
How far
What
are
we
we
need to
reading?
do, David, is just send to Mary Margaret a copy of the book, saying we certainly value your help with keeping our boy straight.
I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. Okay. All right. I'm on it.
Good. Well, after that, we'll go to Letters to an American Lady. In the new year, we're going to take a little break from letters and devote January to a series of after hours episode. I can't wait to bring Diana Glyer back on the show with The Major and the Missionary. I'll be talking to Jakob Weinstein about Joy Davidman and Smoke on the Mountain. Can't wait to hear our visit with Ellen Snyder and Bruce Johnson and a number of others. And so we've got, as always, some of the best Lewis folks in the field, and I'm looking forward to having some of those on.
I'm also going to be interviewing Angelina Stanford from the Literary Life podcast, which is one of my favorites, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about Northrop Frye.
Yeah.
And then in February, we're going to return to discussing Lewis's epistles by discussing Letters to Children and his Latin letters, which is his correspondence to St. Giovanni Calabria.
Oh, what are you showing us right now?
Letters to Children. And
Listeners, we never got our show and tell in the beginning, so Andrew thought mid-show and tell.
I showed you 2 really good $100 bottles of scotch. What else do you want? If you'd like first editions of all of those, I'm happy to bring them.
That's what I'm here for, Andrew. Yeah, and then we're going to be doing Jack's Bookshelf again, back by popular demand. Based on our feedback survey, this was probably the most highly rated / requested part of last season, the most constructive part that people got really excited about. And so, yeah, we're going to be bringing back Plato, Augustine. I'm not sure if bringing back is the right word. Boethius, Julian of Norwich, Edmund Spencer, Charles Williams, so many great people. If you can't tell, this is my first time recording in months because I'm already stumbling over my words.
And I will point out that in the episode of Julian of Norwich, we will be spending some time talking about the correct pronunciation. It's funny. I actually mentioned to Andrew on our earlier call that you weren't attending that I just listened to yet another audiobook about Lewis, and the person reading the book mispronounced Magdalene and Julian of Norwich.
Oh, no.
We need to fix the world, guys. We need to fix the world.
Well, and part of our comments came because David pronounced the holidays the holes, and I had always thought of them in my head as the halls, because we say holiday, but the Brits say more like holiday. And so, there's that phrase in What Happened to You During the Halls, says Jill to Eustace. And I'd always been mispronouncing it in my mind, so I'm glad David came along.
It's not really a mispronunciation. The pronunciation will vary a little bit across England. I would have allowed it. But anyway, after Jack's Bookshelf, we will be having our long-delayed MacDonald month, where we'll be looking at the life and work of George MacDonald, including The Golden Key, whose audiobook is available to all of our patron supporters at any level.
Wonderful. And then we'll end up with one of our favorites, with Narnia Month, and we'll discover the last book in the series with my wife, Lazo the Greater, Kristen. Dr. Kristen Ditchfield Lazo will come on, and we'll interview a few scholars, and then we'll have our season finale.
And then the best part, well, I probably shouldn't say that. Season 7 is going to be great, but we return for Paralandra. I'm excited to get back to that because I really did enjoy Out of Silent Planet.
That's
pleased. Well, let's talk a little bit about Lewis's letters. Matt, let's begin with you. What's been your experience of Lewis's letters prior to this coming season? Have you read any of them?
Let's dive into all of the intellectual rigor that I dove into these letters. Well, Letters to American Lady just has this poignant punch to the wisdom that he provides her. They get into some debates about politics and no taxation without representation, but that's okay.
Oh, wow.
Ouch, calling me out, David. Oh, that would have been a better one, to be honest. I have read, I shouldn't admit this because David gave it to me as a gift. I've read half of the Latin letters.
I knew it. I asked you about it before. And he said, oh, no, I've read it. I thought he's lying.
I read half of it. I have not read the other ones.
Okie doke. Well, let's do the contrast before we go to the golden mean. Andrew, which of Lewis's letters have you read?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I've read all of them. I think I have made my way through all of the 3 volumes of collected letters. And before that, the several different editions of letters. David, when we chatted about that this morning, listeners, David called me out on that, and I may have missed a few. But I almost never pick up a letter and read it, and it doesn't sound familiar. And of course, there's a great paperback in 1994 by Walter Hooper. And so I've been reading them for 30 years easily. I may have read them all. Letters to Children is a favorite. My wife quotes it all the time. I even did a paper called C.S. Lewis, the Likely Latinist. And I did a deep dive into Lewis's Latin prose comp in the Letters to St. Giovanni. And so that was, his Latin is very good. And one of the things that I noticed and it really, really loved about Latin letters is that when Lewis is writing to a clergy person, Sister Penelope, St. Giovanni, he will often be more frank and open with his emotions than he is in any of the other letters. And so when we get to Latin letters, we'll touch on some of that. So it's always a delight. I describe it as when you grab a collection of Lewis's letters and open them anywhere, I find that time just kind of tempus fugit, right? Time just flies away. And an hour later, I'll just still be reading because they're so compelling. And it's one of those, Lewis talks about, one of these browsy kinds of books that you don't necessarily need to read start to finish. So, and of course, the letters give us great chronology, and that's helped me a lot in my own scholarship. So what about you, David?
I have read most of the collections, I would say. So the smaller collections, so Letters to an American Lady, Latin Letters, Letters to Children, the Walter Hooper collection. But I haven't gone through the massive 3 volumes, maybe in my retirement.
Well, and oftentimes when people ask me what my favorite C.S. Lewis book is, the obvious answer aside, a lot of times I'll say Collected Letters, Volume 3, because that's when he meets Joy Davidman. That's when he goes to Cambridge. It's when he's writing Narnia. And so those are some of my favorites.
But you have a particular history with Letters to an American Lady, don't you?
You know, I do, and thank you for remembering. Letters to an American Lady was my first adult C.S. Lewis book. I had read Narnia as a kid, as an unbeliever. I read Narnia again as a teenager, and was thrilled to discover the spiritual analogies that were there, and continued to reread Narnia from time to time. But at a period that I've mentioned, I've spoken about here before, so no need to belabor. But during a crisis of faith, Phil Keggy lent me a copy of Letters to an American Lady, and it was that lithe, quick, thoughtful mind that really captivated me. And that was my first adult C.S. Lewis. And I think I turned to Surprised by Joy after that. But it was Letters to an American Lady that really absolutely set the hook in my mouth. And that's when the hunger for Lewis began, and it's never stopped.
I think I first read it in my first year of marriage. And it's rather cute because we had our family pictures taken for Christmas. Those of you who are married know that this happens, whether you want to or not. But it means that I did get to have a picture with my daughter Lucy, and I'm reading her Letters to an American Lady. Too adorable.
That's great.
But I thought we should probably spend some time in this episode talking a little bit about these different collections which we're going to be reading this season. So what can we say about them? So we're going to rely on Andrew's ad hoc knowledge. Let's see how good he is. So Andrew, what can you actually tell us about Letters to an American Lady?
Letters to an American Lady, a long series of letters from Lewis to an American correspondent from Washington, D.C., a Catholic woman named Mary Willis Shelburne. Originally, the name was blanked out. In fact, in the first edition and the paperback of the first edition, it was Mrs. Blank. And then, as Lewis was wont to do with longtime correspondence, at some point he and she decided to be on a first name basis. So he began addressing her as Mary. Peeking in my book, I know that's cheating. The letters start in 1950, and they go all the way through to actually just a couple of months before he dies, until August 30th of 1963. It's a testament to Lewis's discipleship, to Lewis's humility, and to, frankly, his great love for people, his willingness to be interrupted. And so they exchange letters rather frequently, and she's often complaining and talking about her money troubles and her health issues. And Lewis is often kind of chuffing her up, bucking her up, and helping her to see the right side of things, an optimistic and faithful side of things. And there's loads of, I think, really good humor and good advice in those letters. And that's part of why their charm endures to this day.
Absolutely. And the next one we've got is Letters to Children. And I think I mentioned this on the live stream. I read this book on a journey back from Los Angeles to San Diego. I had been in LA giving a talk, pretty sure on Lewis. Actually, I think it was the same talk I gave this morning. I was at the local seminary giving them an introduction to the Screwtape Letters. But I was in LA it was for Lent. Yes, it was that talk. It was a parish that used to bring me up there to do their Lenten series, and I just given a talk on Screwtape. And I was feeling intellectually peckish, and I stopped off at a bookstore, and this was the Lewis book they had, which I had never read. And so I journeyed from LA back to San Diego, stopping 4 or 5 times to get a drink or a meal. It literally took me the entire day, and not just because LA traffic is awful. I took the pretty route and stopped off at pretty lookout points and read this book on the way back. And it's what it says on the tin. It's C.S. Lewis's Letters to Children. So you had all of these children writing to him, very often enthusing about Narnia and having questions about Narnia. And you also have the occasional parent writing to him. And these are Lewis's responses. And I would say this is where you really see his versatility as a writer. As our friend Dr. Stephen Beebe would say, that he's audience-centered, that he pitches his letters perfectly when he's writing to children. He knows who he's talking to, but at the same time, he doesn't talk down to them. It's quite a curious ability. And the other thing that's lovely about this book is it's got an introduction by Marjorie Lamp Mead from the Wade Center. And it does just give a wonderful introduction to Lewis's own childhood, and also just his attitude towards children. And so, Matt, since you've read half of it, what would you like to tell us about the Latin letters of C.S. Lewis?
The only thing I remember this was back in 2017, guys. This was a while ago. I remember, wasn't the saint pretty aggressive with trying to convert Lewis to Catholicism? I remember reading the language and being like, wow, he's pretty direct. Aggressive might not be the right word, but direct at first. Just like, why XYZ? And wasn't really shying away from it. And then I think, didn't it settle into a little bit less of that after Lewis pushed back? I think that you also see Lewis push back pretty directly. That's about all I remember. That was during a season when I'd come back to Catholicism maybe 18 months before that, maybe 24, but was still really early on, and a lot of early church father reading and stuff. So that's probably why that's the part that stuck out to me, because that also was that season of my life.
Yeah. St. Calabria, he had a real passion for Christian unity, and I get the impression that he and I would have got along very nicely because he cared about these issues very much, but at the same time he was also very ecumenical, because he recognized who Lewis was and his ability to communicate the Christian faith, and their camaraderie in that, while at the same time having very direct, honest, and frank discussions, and I would say unusually frank discussions for Lewis on this particular subject, because he seems to have been generally very hard to draw into conversation on these sorts of topics, even in private correspondence. But St. Calabria managed to achieve it. And it's probably worth saying, from the title, the Latin letters, these were written in Latin, because St. Calabria wanted to write to Lewis, and he didn't know if Lewis knew Italian. And he knew enough medieval Italian to read Dante, of course, as you do. Yeah. But he knew that his Latin would be good enough for them to be able to converse. And so that's what you read. So if you buy the book, on one side of the page, you have the Latin. On the other, you have the English.
To me, that's one of the great charms of the Latin letters, is that that Don Giovanni, as he was, he's since become a saint in recent years. Don Giovanni knew that as a humane man, Lewis would have Latin and be able to write in Latin. And I think that Lewis actually did have enough modern Italian that he could probably have pulled it off. But having got a first-class degree in Latin prose comp and all the rest, I think that it was fabulous. And just for any student of Latin, that's also a really fun way to go. If you've had any Latin, it's delightful to read them on the facing page translation.
Yeah. The school that my son is going to go to, most likely, they do Latin, and I've already promised my wife that prior to him going there, I'm going to make an effort to bring my Latin back up to scratch, because I also did it in school. Hated every second of it, but I'm actually kind of excited the fact that I'll actually now have a textbook, so to speak, that I'm actually rather keen to be able to read.
Oh, that's great.
And actually, Andrew, when you and I were at the Wade Center recently, yes. I did some research on
By
the
way, let
letters.
me pause at that. That phrase is almost as delightful to me as me talking about Macallan is to Matt.
Yeah. So when we were at the Wade Center, I'd looked up what materials they had related to the Latin letters, and I found the essays by Father Cuneo from San Diego. He's an Orthodox priest, and he's written about the Latin letters. And it was funny, as I was sitting in the reading room of the Wade Center, I would go over occasionally to Andrew and share a line or two, because there were some lovely sections of it. He says, Lewis is English in diction, Christian in content, but Roman in his ability to create a good adage. and needless to say, Andrew would then come back over and want to talk to me about Till We Have Faces.
Joy Davidman. I was working on Joy Davidman.
It felt like you were talking about Till We Have Faces, though, all the time.
Well, yes, as well it should. So I love the Latin letters and love there's a kind of courtesy. And I do want to push back. I don't know if there's so much of a push from Don Giovanni for Lewis to convert, but one of the things that occupies much of their time and actually much of their prayers that they encourage one another to is a prayer for the reunification, for unity between our churches. And that was a fond thought for both of them. And they seemed to really, really think and talk a lot about that. I also love the way that Lewis addresses him, delectissime pater, and delectissime in Christo, my most delighted, my most beloved in Christ.
That is a good comment, Andrew, of how direct isn't, you're exactly right. It's not always with an ulterior motive of I have to convert this person. I mean, if you're two individuals that are incredibly intelligent and you desire reunification, honestly, you would love to come across someone that you highly respect that holds a different view. And just like iron sharpen iron, be direct and try to come to answers. Because sometimes it's hard to find someone on the other side that you just have a deep respect for, that you want to go back and forth.
Yeah. Well, and Lewis says, in such matters, to find an enemy is almost to find a friend.
That's a good point.
Well, we've managed to zip through all of my material very quickly. We've got a little bit of time. So anything you guys want to chat about?
These galas are keeping me up about 3 to 4 hours past my bedtime.
People, please pray for Matt, the poor guy. He has to go to these black tie dinners all the time. How will he survive?
This one's going to be a late one too. It's a long drive.
Where
My
is this
girlfriend
next
will
one?
listen to this because she listens to all the episodes I'm in. She said she's already listened to probably 40 or 50 episodes. She's gone back and just been devouring them. She told me earlier because her sister's going to be there too, and her sister's partly putting it on, and she's like, you can drive back separate because I might just stay with her because I want to make sure she gets home safe. And my brain first jumped to 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Oh boy, of course I'm not going to leave her there. This is going to be a late night. Going to need some espresso. Here we go.
Yeah, I was going to say, for someone that's used to going to bed at 8 p.m., I mean,
I know.
good grief, this is wild living you're engaging in.
This is, in fairness, closer to my wake up time than my bedtime. I wake up at 4:30.
I want to read, let me just read one of the letters to children from May 7th, 1954, letter to Joan, a frequent correspondent. It says, Dear Joan, thanks for letter and pictures. I say, you are lucky to have armor. I would have loved it when I was a boy, but it never came my way. The kind you have would be even better for Vikings, etc., than for Arthurian knights. As for doing more Narnian books than 7, isn't it better to stop when people are still asking for more than to go on till they are tired? Love from yours, C.S. Lewis. So just this really delightful back and forth with the children. And readers or listeners, the letter from the letter that originally spoiled the Narnian Chronicle order is in the letters to children. And I don't know, David, maybe I can do a half pint with Lawrence Craig.
We can dox him. People can harass him.
I think
online.
He's on our side now. I've had some correspondence with Lawrence Craig, the little boy who wrote to Lewis suggesting that the books be in Narnian order, and maybe we'll see if we can do a little half pint with him or something.
Yeah, hopefully in sackcloth and ashes as appropriate.
That's great.
Well, in that case, I think this is going to be a slightly shorter episode than normal because I hear the call for final drinks. And so we'd like to thank our sound engineers, Taylor and Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to thank our new intern who is going to be coming online this season, saving me a bunch of work, which I'm very much looking forward to. Thanks to all of our listeners and Patreon supporters, particularly our top tier supporters. Alex, James, Matt 1 and 2, Erica, Joelle, Amanda, Thomas, Bud, Shane, Kay, Paul, Gary, Stephen, Kelly, Chris, John, James, Kate, Peter, David, Angela, and Rowdy.
Yes.
And at the time this goes out, I will have just put something new in the mail for our Patreon supporters, and I've even got your Christmas presents ready. So look forward to those.
And a quick shout out in that list to Bud, who just sent me a text this morning of him, or yesterday, of him with a first edition of Letters to an American Lady. So he's ready for the episode, as I hope the rest of you are.
I love it.
And we pray for you all, particularly on every Tuesday, offering the prayers for our Slack channel as well. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please tell a friend and read along with us this season. And join us next time,
when we'll continue to go further up
And further in.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.